Hello, this is Carrie Pallardy with New Cannabis Ventures. I am joined today by Ben Curren, founder and CEO of Greenbit, a management and compliance platform for legal cannabis retailers. Thank you, Ben, for taking the time to speak with us today.
Yeah, thank you, Carrie.
Yes, absolutely. We're happy to have you. Starting out, I would love to have you talk about what you were doing before you founded Greenbit.
Yeah, so, I've kind of been an entrepreneur since a pretty early age. I went to college, in the early 90s. I went for about a year and a half, and then it actually ended up dropping out and joining the dot-com, like the San Francisco dot-com boom in the late 90s. So even then it is when I started working on my first business. I ended up going back to college and then finishing my degree in the early 2000s, and then started several companies. So of my total career, starting in probably 1998, I've been employed, self-employed almost the whole time. For about 4 years, I worked at Intuit as a QuickBooks engineer, as a payroll engineer. But right after that, I had a consulting company. And then before Greenbit, I had a company called Outright, which was venture-backed, grew that fairly large. Like currently there's over 1 million businesses using that software. And I sold it actually to GoDaddy in 2012.
That's great. Now, what opportunity did you see in the cannabis industry?
Yeah, so, to get you kind of like in where I was mindset-wise, so I sold Outright to GoDaddy in 2012. I stayed for about a year. So at the end of 2013, I ended up leaving GoDaddy. At first, I was, planning to take some time off. I immediately got pretty bored. So I started kind of looking for other ventures to start. I don't remember exactly how, but I have this like list of ideas that I always keep. So typically I have ideas, but those ideas I'm never able to execute on because I tend to be running a business at the time. So I always have this list. And so when I finally had some time, I started curating this list and saying, hey, what should I work on? Now, somehow in there I had a note about the cannabis industry to look at it. And I don't actually remember what prompted me to write that down. But, once I saw that note, I started to do some research. And this was in early 2014. So at the time, if you remember back in 2014, Colorado had launched its recreational cannabis program, and Washington was prepping to. Their stores weren't open yet, but they were starting to license all the growers. So when I looked into what was happening with in the cannabis industry, I flew up to Washington, and there was this conference, and it was like about 100 people. And it included like everyone, the liquor control board, software companies, the growers, the retailers. And I kind of just walked around and kind of, just did a bunch of kind of market research, just understanding what was going on with the space. And really what I found is it's a bunch of like small business owners who are working in one of the most regulated industries I've ever seen. And then they had almost no tools. It was in a market I believed was going to be growing really, really quickly, like after I looked into it. And so those four things really made it sound really interesting because if you think of my skill set, like I was at Intuit, I've built online accounting software, like I've worked with small businesses building accounting and bookkeeping and like financial automation software for, over 10 years. So to me, I was like, wow, I have this amazing skill set. There's like a huge problem in this growing industry. And to me, this was really exciting because it's like, hey, I can take my skills and really help solve a lot of these root cause issues.
Absolutely. Can you tell me more about the product that Greenbit provides for its clients, exactly how it works?
Yeah, of course. So, we're really a cannabis retail solution. So what we do is we run like all aspects of a dispensary or a cannabis retailer. That would be things from like patient registration to loyalty programs for customers. We do all the sales, so like our software is the cash registers themselves. We do all inventory tracking, so any inventory that's coming into in or out of the store, Greenbit manages that inventory. And then the really big thing that we really innovated on is we completely have automated the interaction to seed to sale tracking or traceability. So if you live in a state like in Colorado or Washington, And most of the more recent states that have legalized, they have a traceability or seed to sale system. And what our software does is think of it as kind of like a square, where it's very, very simple. Anyone can kind of use it, but it's highly sophisticated. And behind the scenes, it actually hooks into the government and will automate all your daily reporting. So you never have to like log into something like Metric or BioTrack or Leaf Data. You don't have to log into those ever. Our software actually manages it 100%. We're still the only software that can do that across all of the current legal states.
That's great. Now, how did you get such high customer penetration in the state of Washington?
Well, let's see. So the way I just run businesses, I learned this early on that when running a business, you kind of have more opportunities than you can take advantage of at any given time, right? Because like when I started Greenbits, like it was 4 of us, and we don't have a lot of capital. So a lot of people at the time, were going like, oh, we're going to build software that that runs retailers, that runs processors, that runs for growers, government systems. And then they also do that across all geographies. Oh, we're going to make sure that let's go to Washington, let's go to Alaska, let's go to Colorado. To me, that in the past has burned me every single time. What it ends up happening is you build like mediocre solutions for all of those aspects. So I kind of learned early in my career to focus, highly, highly focus, and be very disciplined and say no sometimes to opportunity. Don't let them pull you off track. So Washington, the reason we have so much market penetration there is that we just highly, highly focused on Washington and making sure we got it right before we expanded anywhere else. So Greenbits really narrowed its focus. Like we really do an amazing job of running retail, but we don't do grow, and we don't run grow. At the time, we wouldn't go into any other state but Washington. It's the only state we would operate in. So we were able to build like a really amazing offering early on in Washington, even though we only had like 4 or 5 people competing against a big company like BioTrack that had over 50 at the time. And even though BioTrack had the state contract, just the fact of us focusing, iterating quickly on our software and making sure that solution was really strong, we were able to, in less than 3 years, go from 0% market penetration to over 75-80% market penetration in the state of Washington.
That's fantastic. Now, you have started expanding into other states after, like you said, you had that laser focus on Washington.
Yes.
Can you update us on where you are and where you hope to be by the end of this year?
Yeah, and so, exactly. So once Washington really started working, we had that nailed down, and we had the resources to make sure, hey, we can continue to do an amazing job here. We started saying, okay, where do we want to go next? So that's when we kind of started looking at Colorado, and then we built the Metric integration, and we made sure that was really streamlined. But at the time, I then had enough resources to put to hire more people to then help on Colorado. Okay, and then we did the same thing in Oregon. And so now, back in 2014, it was just 4 of us, and now we're almost 50, a team of 50 people, 50. Okay, we're trying to end the year a team of around 115. Okay, and so a lot of that comes because we're starting to build additional product lines. We're starting to build, and we're starting to expand more and more nationally than internationally. So that's what's going to get us onto our growth plans. So where we currently operate in now, the states that we support are, let's see if I can name them all. We've got Alaska, we have Oregon, we have Washington, we have Colorado, we have California, Nevada, Maryland, Michigan, Arizona. And Michigan and Arizona are brand new. We only have a couple beta stores there right now, but we're starting to expand there. Our plans this year are to be 100% national and starting to move international.
That's great. That's certainly a lot of growth. Now, going back to how you started, you initially self-funded Greenbits. How much external capital have you raised so far, and how much of the company is held by management?
Yeah, so this is probably really unique for startups, right? Like most startups, it's like, oh, I have an idea, I'm going to go raise capital. I was lucky enough that I've kind of had a career building startups, so I've had some experience, and I've had some successful exits. So I had some working capital to be able to start the business. So in 2014, I self-funded. We were self-funded all the way until 2017. In early 2017, we raised $3 million. That included Casa Verde, and then some other really prolific, amazing founders from startups in Silicon Valley. And so that $3 million really helped us to make sure that when we expanded, I could hire before we expanded. So we were able to go, I was able to hire the team, get the tools in place when we went into additional states, and because a lot of those states I mentioned were added in 2017, is to make sure that we could serve those markets really well. So so that's what got us, to that $3 million. Now, What's interesting is that $3 million is all convertible debt. So what that means is it's really kind of a loan. So the business is still to this day 100% owned by myself and the team.
Great. Now, switching tracks a little bit, there have been some security issues at MJ Freeway. How has that helped your business?
It definitely helps us in the sense of, it's the way I can think of it is MJ Freeway and BioTrack were started, prior to 2012. So if both of them were executing extremely well in serving their customers' needs, we would have never had the possibility to create a business. So because of this shift in the way the industry was managed from really being a medical market where you were tracking recs and how many plants you could grow per patient to CDSL tracking by the state, that transition itself created a gap that allowed GreenBits to even exist. So when that occurred, what happened is BioTrack and MJ Freeway, even to this day, have been having trouble getting their products working the way the states now currently work, where we had the foresight of knowing how the state and CDSL tracking works. So we were able to build everything from the scratch to make that really, really simple. And so, so when MJ Freeway is having these security type issues, really what it does is it just continues to, for their customers, it's eroding their confidence. So then they start looking for other solutions. And because of our momentum and because our offering and really still being the only one that can 100% automate, all of your reporting into things like metric and your traceability, we picked up a ton of customers. So every time there's a security breach with MJ Freeway, we get a ton amount of inbound and all of our sales numbers jump up. And there's still, even now talking to customers, you still talk to people that are on MJ Freeway and are feeling just burned by some of the past mistakes, that have occurred there. And so you'll see even on all of our deals, just everything became easier for us to close more deals because MJ Freeway still has a lot of the industry.
That makes sense. Now, are you able to tell us your revenue in 2017 or any projections going forward?
Yeah. So I can tell you that's fine. I'm totally open on some of these things. So, our revenue in 2017, we ended below 10 million run rate. So, in 2017, and we're looking to grow to 100 million run rate by 2020.
Fantastic. Now, looking forward, how's your service offering evolved, and do you plan to further expand what you're offering your customers?
Yeah, that's a great question. Anytime you start a business or any venture or project, right? You have these assumptions when starting, and then most of them end up being incorrect or they become highly refined. And that's pretty much exactly what happened with GreenBits as well. So in 2014, when starting the company, we saw the CDSL tracking and the compliance pieces that were required. And we were like, man, if we solve that, that's a humongous problem. Nobody has solved it yet. If we solve that, that's the secret to our success. So when we built our first offering, it was literally a cash register with very, very basic inventory tracking and a way to automate CDSL tracking. That's all it did. But it was very basic. It didn't have permissions on the cash register. It didn't have a back office website to manage the business. So it was very, very bare bones. But it did that one thing so well that nobody else did that was really helped gain traction. But as soon as you start doing that, right? Like all of the people that are using that software then are saying, hey, okay, that's great. You've automated seed-to-sale tracking, but we run a day-to-day business. So I have patients coming in. I have to do inventory auditing. I have to do payroll. I have got to do accounting. There's all these other things that dispensaries have to do. And they kept coming to us to say, when are you going to have this? This kind of like, up-leveled us to say, okay, it's not just like this point-of-sale inventory. What we really need to think is more like an ERP type system. And I've never been a fan of the ERP because I've never heard anyone ask for an enterprise resource planning tool. That's just too abstract. So we really call it a cannabis retail solution. And what that means is we run every aspect of a cannabis retailer. Okay, and that's what we've pivoted to. And we built, so a subset of that is point of sale and inventory compliance, but it's much more full encompassing because we run every aspect of the business. So that's what we've started to evolve to. That offering, we're finishing the last couple of things this quarter that I would call that complete, and then we would just be working on improving it rather than adding major features. And then we're going to start looking at other aspects. So if you think of the lifecycle dispensary, they first have to be able to, I need to be able to make sales and I need to make sure that I'm compliant or else I can't stay in business. Then they start thinking, hey, I need to make sure that I can operate efficiently. Okay, so that was like our next offering. And then the next thing they start asking is growth. Like, hey, now I need help growing my business, either through multiple locations, keeping customers in, increasing ticket value. And so that's kind of the next offering that we're starting to think of. Some of it is through partners like Spring Big and Baker, but some of it will have some of our own offerings there as well.
Wonderful. Ben, thank you for speaking with us today. We look forward to tracking the growth of GreenBit.
Yeah, thank you very much. That was great.